trying to shoot down angels. They're trying to pull their wings off so they can't fly. And oh, but she's so brave though, just like a tornado. She's taking us by.
Hello YouTubers and welcome to my movie review, where today I review Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. So, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, this is a sequel to the 2014 film Maleficent, a film that I actually haven't seen, so I went and saw this movie blindly. I had a bit of time, I was running an errand and I had to go out, so I thought, well, I'll go and watch a movie anyway, and Maleficent was the one that was on. So, the basic plot of this film is that Maleficent's goddaughter, known as Aurora, is getting married to the prince of the kingdom. And they are trying to kind of use the marriage to bring the two sides together. So there's a side that, so Maleficent's people, the Moors, which are these big human bird-like creatures, human-bird hybrids, I guess I should say, and then the humans from the kingdom. I can't remember the name of the kingdom, but they are trying to bring them together to form an alliance because there is a big conflict going on at the moment. And sadly, things don't go very well because the Queen, otherwise known as the Prince's mother, she doesn't like Maleficent and she has her own ideas about ruling the kingdom. So she causes a rift between the families, and then basically the whole thing, you know, Aurora and the Prince are trying to get married. And then there's this whole build-up to this war that is going to break out. And, yeah, it's up to Maleficent to try and keep the peace and save her goddaughter and stop the war from happening. So that's kind of it, really. Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. I would have got this review out a bit sooner because I saw this movie a week ago, but I had problems recording with the previous version of this review, but you wouldn't have known that anyway unless I mentioned it. This movie is passable. In a sort of autumn month where there's not much out, this is another one of those movies that's just, yeah, it's okay. I think this is a great film for young girls. Young girls and young kids, potentially young boys, might like this. Because it's got a lot of magical things in it. It's very visually stunning, well, to a degree. With the exception of a few CGI moments which aren't very convincing. The parts in the woodland realm where we see all these creatures going around, like there's these walking trees, these fairies and all these woodland creatures, they don't look the most convincing out of all the CGI, to be honest. But this movie has a good story, a simple story. I mean, we've seen this kind of story before, but for young kids, I think it will be an entertaining ride. It's just nothing remarkable. It really isn't anything special. And another sort of major problem I have with this film is the fact that Angelina Jolie, as Maleficent, she is basically sidelined in her own film. The first act of this movie is good. It sets up the story quite well. And after the dinner scene, into the second act, the movie slows right down and it becomes a bit of a drag, which is a shame. The third act is pretty good with the climactic battle that takes place. That's pretty good, that's entertaining, but the second act is dull. It's boring. Maleficent sits around with the Moors for ages and she doesn't do anything. I don't know if the film really knows who it's focusing on. Whether it's focusing on Maleficent or Aurora, I don't know. Like, who's the main character? It's not who's the central protagonist. It doesn't really make any sense to me. She has scenes, but she just most of the time she's sitting there not doing much. It's only towards the end when she decides to take action and try and engage in the fight. But it's just kind of boring. I found myself getting bored in the halfway point of this film. The film's 2 hours long, so it should be much brisker than what it is. But it's not, sadly. However, the acting is very good. Angelina Jolie plays Maleficent very well, as does Elle Fanning, who plays Aurora. Both of them put on British accents, and they do a very good job in doing so. Not many Americans can pull it off, but they're two of the few that can. And Elle Fanning is also a gorgeous girl. She's pretty. She's very pretty, very stunning. Harris Dickinson as the prince. He's good in the scenes he's in. Michelle Pfeiffer plays the evil queen who takes over the land, and she's quite an imposing threat. She proves to be a very sadistic character. You know, her performance reminded me of her performance in Stardust, the fantasy movie that came out in 2007. She played an evil witch. Her performance here reminded me a bit of that. Just not as intense, of course. Sam Riley plays this guy called Dioval, who can turn into this raven. He's Maleficent's servant. He doesn't do an awful lot in the movie, but I like his performance nonetheless. Same with Chiwetel Ejiofor. His character is there, and then his character just kind of dies. I mean, that's not really a spoiler because he doesn't do anything in the movie. Sadly, he doesn't really do much. I mean, he looks cool, like with all his dreadlocks and everything, but yeah, he just doesn't do a lot. It's a bit of a waste of Chiwetel Ejiofor, really. He's such a good actor. You give him something like that, it's not really worth it. Ed Skrien plays Bora, who's the leader of the Moors, the bird creatures. And their underground lair is cool, but basically it's just a cave. There isn't really much else to it. The design could have been a bit more interesting. They could have done something to make it look a bit more in line with the world of the film. It feels oddly separate, but the prosthetics and the makeup are good for the Moors, and they do look they look great in their appearance, at least. The king is actually a very small part. Robert Lindsay, who plays the king, he's asleep for most of the movie. He's in the first act of the film, then he's sort of asleep for the second act because he gets cursed. And then at the end, he wakes up and everything's... he sees the war going on, and he realises his wife has betrayed him and all of that. So as a character, he really doesn't do an awful lot. And also, Warwick Davis plays this sort of dwarf professor guy, this scientist. He's making this compound, this red powder that will defeat the Moors, which is interesting. I'm not sure why they had to include him in the film, but I like seeing Warwick Davis. He's always a good screen presence. The film is directed by Joachim Ronnning, who directed the last Pirates of the Caribbean film. He directed Pirates of the Caribbean: Salazar's Revenge, along with his friend Espen Sandberg, although this time he's solely directing on his own. On a technical level, the film's good enough. Apart from some of the dodgy CGI, it looks nice. I mean, the castle actually reminds me of Minas Tirith from Lord of the Rings, the big sort of white sort of citadel, which is really impressive. This kind of reminded me of that in a way. So yeah, and of course the battle itself is very entertaining and very impressive. But there really isn't anything remarkable about it. It's just kind of meh. Yeah, it's all right. It's just an entertaining spectacle. But I think something that kids would probably enjoy. I think young girls would probably get a kick out of it more than anyone else. But compared to films like Joker, it doesn't hold a candle. So I will say this movie gets a 6 out of 10 from me.
They're trying to shoot down angels. They're trying to pull their wings off so they can't fly. And oh, but she's so brave.
Yes, 6 out of 10 for Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. So, thank you very much for watching my review, and stay tuned for future reviews. I will be reviewing the original Frozen movie very soon, as well as the 50 Shades of Grey trilogy. Oh god, that's gonna be a fucking nightmare. But anyway, thank you guys all for watching, and as always, I'm Mr. TARDIS11. See ya.